My name's Stipe. I'm the managing director of Chamberlain's Law Firm. I'm based out of Sydney. Professionally, I'm an insolvency lawyer. I'd probably consider myself an expert or specialist in the area. I do a lot of work in and around advocacy for industry and working with independent advocacy groups for the interests of insolvency practitioners within industry. And then separately, I do a lot of work professionally looking after insolvency practitioners and directors, individuals with respect to personal and corporate insolvency matters. But I guess that's just a little bit about what I do, because my main job is really running the ninth fastest growing law firm in the country last year, according to Lawyers Weekly, which is Chamberlain's Law Firm. And yeah, it's quite a bit of fun. I've been in the current position for about 2 years now, so quite a young appointment, but ultimately I found that youth is not really an impediment to running a successful law firm. If anything, for us, it's an asset. We define our successes around being agile and responsive to client needs and generally just having the energy to go the extra mile. And that's something I think, whether it's the naivety of youth or the energy of youth, I think a lot of it comes from that. One of my business mentors in industry actually once told me that being a lawyer is easy, but being a good lawyer is hard. And as far as being a principal rather than managing an entire law firm, I would say that that single maxim is probably what's guided me at every step of my career. And certainly when I became a partner or a director at Chamberlain's prior to my last promotion, I guess, that view on professionalism, continuous process improvement, quality assurance, and so on, just being bloody exceptional, if I can put it that way, has always underpinned every aspect of the processes that my team develops, the training we undertake with our lawyers. Ultimately, I guess I'm a big believer in the fact that the industry says and the law says that after 2 years post-qualification experience, you can be a competent and qualified, unrestricted practicing certificate holder. But the fundamental reality of practice is that the historical structure of law firms, the economic incentives, the training methodologies, the capacity of individuals to develop expertise within the industry means that very few people are able to achieve that to the necessary high standard that successful boutiques or growing mid-tiers or top-tier firms expect. So I think the maxim of being a lawyer, being a good lawyer and working hard to achieve that is probably the best tip I've ever gotten, though it might seem overly simplistic. Focusing on culture, I think, is the most valuable insight I have for anyone. And I don't mean that as an abstract statement. What I really mean is, take, for example, the hypothetical of a sole trader. I think it's very easy for individuals who go out and start their own, single person, single partner practice in the same way that it's very easy for an individual who has worked their way up through the bureaucracy and challenges of a larger law firm to become a partner and become, in some indirect way, a business owner and manager, at least the manager of their own team and their practice, to feel very individualistically about what it is they do. It's brand me, it's my clients, it's my team. The insight that I would give is culture. I would focus first on what is the culture of my practice or my firm. So whether it's a team within a larger firm or a firm itself or a sole trader, I would have loved to have sat down on day one of my career, or at least day one of my legal practice management journey, and known that I should have defined culture at that point. How do I want to interact? What do I value? What do my clients value? How do I want to be perceived by them? And how will our internal culture fuel the successes around the things that we've identified with respect to those? I think that's something most law firms don't do. they're just amorphous amalgamations of different practices, and practices are amalgamations of different practitioners with different styles and systems, and I just don't think you can grow in a meaningfully strategic way without first defining culture and then creating systems and processes that are consistent with that culture. As far as challenges, I fully acknowledge that I'm a white hetero male, so Australian modern society has afforded me, many benefits which disadvantaged groups and others, have been fighting for or continue to struggle for, both within industry and outside of industry. But um, I would say my biggest challenge was actually ageism. So I became a director of Chamberlain's in my mid 20s and the managing director in and around the age of 30. I think I was 29. And that's in circumstances where, some of our staff, like Gary Patterson, have been a lawyer for 50 years and are triple accredited specialists and have run large law firms. And it's not to say I didn't have the support of them, because actually I did. But certainly the perception that you need to be old, you need to be white, you need to be male to be a successful managing partner of a law firm is something that industry and society is still working its way around. And that was probably the biggest challenge, but also the biggest driver for me, because it forced us as a business and myself as an individual to look past that and say, well, what is our unique value proposition? What are we good at? What are we better than anyone else in the world at? And why are we valuable to our clients, regardless of my age or any other challenges we might face? I'd like first to address the concept of what is the new normal. I mean, I think that the industry, the legal industry, has always been stifled in a way by two things. Firstly, negative and conservative perceptions of solicitors and barristers in the legal industry by the public, even those that are somewhat sophisticated or more sophisticated in their engagement of legal industry, but then also by, I think, unhelpful, frankly, egotistical, uncommercial self-image of the industry that is perpetrated by a lot of people. I mean, ultimately, for me, the reality of the industry moving forward is that there are a lot of lawyers. Margins are eroding in the middle market. There is a shift away from using the same lawyer for everything. There is genuinely a lot of disruption with respect to the acquisition and retention processes of law firms. So linking back to my second comment, what's a challenge people are going to face? I think understanding the client life cycle, understanding what a client expects from a lawyer at a point in time versus what the key is to finding a client, finding that they have a need that you are well placed to service, looking after that need and retaining that client. I think that has changed a lot over the years, and traditional concepts of brand equity and having a good name in a conservative industry becoming far less important, I believe, to a lot of consumers. So I think for a large part of the industry, that is quite a challenge. And so for people who step into positions such as mine in the future, I would say look outside your personal networks, look at outside the traditional ways in which law firms engage with their clients and their external stakeholders, and try to create a process which is unique to the thing that you're best at. I think that's probably my views on that question. I certainly think there is no new normal, but there are a number of challenges which people are facing. I would say I wish I knew that law firms, I wish I truly knew that law firms are not about, they're really just not about the partners. I guess what I'm saying is that particularly in the large boutique and mid-tier space, there's a lot of pressure to grow by acquisition, to leverage, to provide certain financial outcomes, which are driven not necessarily by the needs of the clients, but by the needs of the law firm. So, whether it's funding expensive offices or expensive salaries or inefficient systems or legacy problems or legacy partners, etc. There's a lot of inefficiency in the system, which a lot of law firms build in. And so I wish someone had said to me, Step, you don't need to go about doing it that way. And I certainly think that despite the fact that we have grown, and we have grown to through a small extent by acquisition as a business, I wish someone had told me that's not really the goal. The goal is to find the client, help them grow and grow with them, and let the client take you on a journey. I guess be demand driven rather than supply driven. I wish I had a greater focus on that at the beginning of my legal management career. If I could do it again, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I always say this to work colleagues, to friends, to family. My hobby is my work. I'm passionate about the law, but more importantly, I'm passionate about Chamberlains. I'm passionate about legal management. I'm passionate about growth and the dynamic development of our industry. And to that extent, I would certainly do it again. What would I do differently? I just wouldn't waste time with the traditional model of a law firm at all. I think the biggest concerns for law firms from a traditional perspective are about, intergenerational wealth transfer and transitioning clients between aging partners and managing growth between cities and so on. And had I had my time again, I probably would have opened my own law firm or joined a firm like Chamberlain's much earlier in my career, and I would have focused a lot more about training processes and systems rather than that historically individualistic practice method by which many law firms are sustained. So to answer the question another way, what would I do differently? I would have loved to have caught the vision of what Chamberlain's is now, which is a fully integrated, non-siloed, process quality-driven practice in day one of my career, because of my practical skills, my technical skills, my understanding of management would have developed far more effectively and efficiently than if I had just fumbled my way through it for a few years. So that's probably it from me on that one.